please welcome the front man, Henry Givray.
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to be with you here in Chicago with all the snow. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge on behalf of our entire company and certainly our staff team that supports and serves IBIE. I just want to thank you. It's been an incredible privilege and honor to serve the show for more than 35 years. It's just great to be with you this morning. Thank you. A 14-year-old boy is diagnosed with cancer in April of his freshman year of high school. The boy, who turns 15 in a few months, has a 1-year older brother and, of course, his 2 parents. The doctors give the boy little chance of surviving past 9 months. Now, given that it's the late 60s, the boy endures long hospital stays and undergoes multiple surgeries and is subjected to a battery of tests and intense cobalt radiation treatment. Now, the boy's brother and dad are despondent and overcome with grief and often crying and sad in front of him. The boy's mother, on the other hand, smiling, always cheerful, always referencing the future. As you might suspect, that boy was me. And what I didn't know at the time is that seeing my mom up bolstered my spirits and gave me hope and strength. Without a doubt, her abiding optimism had a profound impact on my recovery. Now, what I learned years later was that this woman who was always up and always smiling during the day went somewhere in the house late at night and broke down and wept uncontrollably. Now, for us as parents, the thought of thinking about our own child, gut-wrenching to think that our child would have to go through something like this, or perhaps even losing a child. But in business and in our professional lives, we do deal with setbacks and challenges and crises, some mild and some very severe. And the point is, our ability to inspire hope and give strength to others will be the difference in creating the conditions for a better tomorrow. Now, this lesson and many others that my mother unwittingly or unknowingly imparted on me was the subject of one of the articles that I wrote, for Business Week. Now, lest you think that my mother was in business or knew management, the exact opposite. Zero negative knowledge and experience. She was clueless when it comes to anything related to business or management. But she had and embodied leadership energy and acted on leadership instincts. Now, examples abound throughout history of men and women whose words and actions and perseverance indelibly shaped the lives of people, the outcome of events, and even the course of nations. Okay, I admit our pursuits as business and professional people are humbler in scope. Nevertheless, anyone, regardless of position or title, who earns leadership's invitation and delivers on its promise can have a meaningful, lasting impact on the lives of others and on the success and vitality of the organization he or she serves. I think we'd all agree that the economic downturn crisis that began in 2008 for so many stubbornly persists, and clearly it's going to be remembered as the most punishing in more than 80 years. And over the years, pundits and so-called experts have bombarded us with their advice and opinions on how to deal with the economic downturn. Now, there are some sound perspectives, I think, and good research that should be looked at and considered. But I don't know about you. I kind of jokingly say this, but it's true. The stuff that's coming at us, I don't know about you, it's enough to make my head explode. In the end, there's no instruction manual that guarantees success for an organization managing through difficult, uncertain times, or for that matter, in seizing opportunities during good times. But there is one certainty. All of the greatest strategies, innovative ideas, and brilliant game plans cannot succeed or be sustained without strong, effective leadership. In fact, leadership is the one imperative that enables everything around the people and the organizations. So when all the noise dissipates, when all of the ideas du jour come and go, we're left with one indisputable truth. And that's that leadership is the uniquely consistent and defining force behind great, enduring organizations. And leadership is recession-proof. Leadership is eternal and without qualification. And the principles of leadership are timeless and never more timely than today. Oh, and by the way, what was true in the past is true today, and that'll always be. And that's that time reveals true leaders and exposes false ones. Now, it is true, right? We know leadership is one of those phenomenon that's been really studied and researched. And I jokingly say that there are gazillion books that have been written on the topic. Now, again, some are well-researched and thoughtful, but from my perspective, most are gimmicky and prescriptive. My favorite being Leadership Lessons from Santa Claus. So what is leadership? We know when we see it, we can measure its impact, and we can feel how it inspires us. But the concept of leadership is elusive. And every attempt at trying to define or otherwise interpret what true leadership is feels a little too vague, a little too abstract, a little too fuzzy, too soft for most people's estimation. So let me ask you, which statement is most true? Great leaders are mostly great visionaries. Great leaders are also great managers. Great leaders possess charisma and eloquence. Great leaders are born. Who thinks the statement that's most true is number one? Show of hands. Who thinks number two is the most true? How about number three? And four? And some of you won't raise your hand no matter what the option was, right? Okay, so it seems a little even. It's a little bit surprising, but my hunch is that some of you didn't raise your hand. So a few minutes ago, I told you the story of my mother, and I mentioned that she possesses leadership energy and acted on leadership instincts. And certainly the historical figures that I highlighted earlier do as well. But the question for all of us is, can we take whatever leadership energy and instincts that we may naturally have and transcend them with conviction, with purpose, with intention, to a conscious level? And for those who don't believe they possess leadership energy or are gifted with leadership instincts, can leadership be learned and demonstrated with intention? The answer, an emphatic yes. An emphatic yes. And what I hope with our little time this morning is to dig a little deeper behind why I'm so emphatic and say yes. So I have a few purposes with our time together. And one of which is that my hope is that you will take some of the thoughts and ideas that I'm presenting with you and that they will resonate with you. Right? And then after today's session, that you will think about leadership in a fundamentally different way. Right? I also share with you a few ideas and principles for everyday use, some practical ideas and tools. I'm also going to introduce to you a working framework for helping measure and define leadership performance and capacity. And perhaps most importantly, I hope that today's session, that in some small way would contribute to your own enthusiasm and commitment to leadership learning and personal growth. So let me start by just sharing with you sort of the difference between leadership and management. So management, let me give you my take. So management is about planning and coordinating, right? And making things work and getting things done. Pretty important stuff, I would argue. Right? And it's about productivity, quality, and systems, and process. Again, pretty important stuff. So management is vested in formal authority. You're promoted or appointed, you're in charge of something. Leadership, on the other hand, is different. And the core essence of leadership is profoundly uncomplicated, involving three critical actions. Leaders visualize, imagine something better about the future. It could be something modest, an improvement in a process. Or it could be transformational, right, with significant impact over the long run. But leaders know they can't get to that future state alone, so they get others to join in the journey. And then they get there. They get there, right? So leadership is about vision and alignment and shared meaning and principles and relationships and change. Leadership is about change. I mean, think about it. Almost by definition, if you're visualizing something better about the future and then you get there, fundamentally, leadership is about change. Oh, and by the way, great leaders are also great managers. I mean, think about it. So sure you've run into people who say, I'm a leader, I'm not a manager because I'm a visionary. Well, no, you're a visionary. You do one of the three critical actions of leadership. The third critical action is getting there. Right? Great leaders are also great managers. But here's the point about leadership, right? It's not something you can control. It's not something bestowed upon you. It's not about your corner office. Right? It's not the same as having authority. In fact, leadership is invited and can only be given willingly by others based on who you are and what you do. And leadership is revealed by what you inspire and what you enable. So I'll share with you a little pet peeve. So why is it we, collective we, use the term leader as a noun and then use a word as an adjective before the word leader to designate someone's industry or profession, right? Business leader, political leader, industry leader, team leader, right? World leader, religious leader, executive leader. No, it drives me nuts. It should be the other way around. Leader should be the adjective if, in fact, you've earned leadership's invitation, right? Leader business person, leader politician, leader team member, leader executive, leader CEO. I will never refer to myself as a leader, ever. And I challenge anyone to find a time where I did. It's not for me to say. CEO, hopefully good CEO. Maybe someday great CEO. But it's not for me to judge. I wrote another article in Business Week where I make the point that CEO and leader have mistakenly become synonymous. Let me explain. CEOs drive annual quantitative results. Leaders build great, enduring companies. CEOs develop and possess great skills in finance and negotiations and marketing. Leaders are shaped and defined by character. CEOs create new products and new strategies. Leaders create purpose and meaning in others. CEOs measure success in terms of earnings, market share growth, stock price appreciation. Leaders measure success through the success of all of those they serve, including customers, employees, communities, shareholders. And true leaders live by a fundamental tenet that service to others is the highest honor and greatest obligation of a true leader. So a couple seconds ago I said that the core essence of leadership is profoundly uncomplicated. Here's the rub. There are no simple formulas. There are no play rules, right, on how to become a true leader. There are only principles and concepts and guidelines. And that's why leadership can't be taught. It must be learned. Leadership can't be taught. It must be learned through an ongoing process of active engagement, self-discovery, and personal growth. Earning leadership's invitation depends not on whom our teachers are or what books we read, but rather on what we do with the lessons we learn. So let me switch now and talk about this leadership framework. The principles underlying this framework have been drawn from my own ongoing journey of learning and adjusting and discovering. The leadership framework has 4 domains. The first domain is who you are. Who you are. Now, I'm not talking about sort of your public persona, but who you are at the core, as defined by these 5 things: your life purpose and your professional mission and your values and your dreams and aspirations. Abraham Lincoln was once asked how long it took him to write the Gettysburg Address. His response: all my life. People need to know who you are and what you stand for before they agree to be led by you. If your choices and behaviors and decisions and actions don't consistently and genuinely connect to your life story, people will know. And they will not give you permission to lead them. So the question is, around who we are, how much time and energy and effort do we put in thoughtfully going through and trying to assess who we are at the core as defined by these 5 facets, these 5 aspects, these 5 dimensions? Do we share with others who we are? And of course, most importantly, do we ensure that every day we connect genuinely and faithfully to who we are? So during our 2 leadership programs that I established and that I facilitate all the sessions, this is one of the early exercises. And even the most senior, experienced, thoughtful individuals have a hard time with this exercise. It's a very powerful exercise. And I have specific definitions around each of these pieces. I would argue we must dig deep and truly understand who we are at the core and share with others in our network of relationships. And again, most importantly, to connect everything that we do every day to who we are. The second domain is what you do. What you do. Now let me be very specific about what I mean about what you do. What you do is the application of your natural talents and your accumulated knowledge, right? And your gained experience and developed skills, right? So it's the application of that. However, it's manifested through your behaviors and practices, right? Oh, and by the way, it's based on some kind of prioritized allocation of your time, energy, and heart. Now, all of us have lots of things that we do every day, right? And I remember years ago when I was young Turk, and I had someone very wise say to me, Henry, you're obviously a really smart guy, you're very talented, and there's a lot of things that you can do better than a lot of people. The question you always want to ask throughout your career, what are the things that only you can do? You better focus on those. So I thought about that over the years. Personal example, I'm the only one that can be a dad to my daughters, right? Better not delegate that. Well, it's the same with leadership. And I would suggest that leaders do 15 things and do them incredibly well. What I would call the essential 15. Now, we don't have time today, obviously, we will on one of them. But some of these things are pretty straightforward to understand. But do we make them, if we want to earn leadership's invitation and deliver on its promise, do we ensure we make them our highest priority? Right? Our highest priority. So, for example, leader communication is not just about being a great talker, right, or a gifted writer. It's also about being an active listener, right, and hearing the unheard, and being able to sense nonverbal cues. Let's move on. So the first two domains was about us, who we are, what we do. The second two domains is our impact on others and on outcomes. So the third domain is what you inspire. Leadership is revealed by what you inspire. Now again, very specific definition. Anyone who knows me, I'm very big on words matter and very precise. Sometimes it drives me nuts because sometimes words, definitions, or you look in the dictionary, they point to each other. So I almost have to invent, my own definitions. What you inspire is to elicit positive actions, emotions, and behaviors in others, and here's the kicker, without the promise of a reward or the threat of punishment. So if you think about it, leadership and motivation are different. Inspiration and motivation are different. Motivation's source of influence is a carrot and or stick. But inspiration comes from the heart, and it flows naturally and willingly. Take a look at these 12 human elements. I would argue strongly that their pervasive existence within any organization is an imperative for that organization to remain vital and value-creating and successful over the long run, regardless of the up and down cycles of the economy and the inevitable shocks that happen to an industry or profession. Right? So, what does it take to inspire? Eloquence and charisma only buy you initial sort of fascination, right? Short-term interest. Right? To inspire, leaders embody and exemplify what I call certain hallmark attributes. And if you take a look at any one of these and you study them, you will see from your own perspective when you've been inspired by someone in any of those human elements, what it's taken. By the way, at the end, I will have a place where you can go if you're interested to hear and learn more about some of my thoughts on this. For example, you notice here something called the 12 Distinguishing Qualities of Leadership, which I've written about. So if you're interested in that, you can just go to this particular website to pick up that article. So, 1776, Christmas Eve, George Washington and his Continental Army, they have gotten almost decimated by the much more powerful, British Army, right? He's lost almost half his men through death, right? Wounded, starvation. And here it is on December 25th, 1776, And George Washington goes around to his men and he says, hey guys, why don't we sort of get on these little boats and cross this river. Oh, by the way, it's like sleeting on a terrible, terrible winter. And go attack this army that's significantly bigger than us and has beaten us every single time. Imagine for a moment what George Washington, who he must have been and what he must have done in order to get his men. Because remember, at that point, it's not like we had an army today where if you just leave, you get into trouble. And these were all farmers and, and storekeepers. And I mean, it wasn't really an army. So imagine. So if you remember your history, that was the Battle of Trenton. And Washington's men won that battle. And it was literally the decisive turning point in the Revolutionary War that gave birth to our nation. And if you were to read about Washington, you will see every single one of these elements in play throughout his life that led up to that defining moment in 1776. The last domain of leadership leadership framework is what you enable. So once again, if I were speaking to people in healthcare, enable is a bad word. But again, a very precise definition. To produce tangible outcomes through others. To produce tangible outcomes through others. Leaders know that in order to ensure the organizations they serve remain vital and value-creating and sustainable, know that certain outcomes must be produced. Obviously, annual results, cohesiveness and alignment, and change and growth. So if you think about it for a moment, whereas inspiration is governed by the heart, feelings, followed by the brain, thinking, enabling is governed by the brain, thinking, followed by hands and feet, doing. So leaders know they must not only communicate, visualize and communicate a desired future state, they have to create the conditions to achieve it. So in this way, leadership is as much about providing the means as it is pointing the way. Right? Specifically, leaders know that they have to continuously practice and hone what I call the 10 fundamentals of enabling. Now, we're not going to go through all of these, but take a look at these for a moment. This is another exercise, homework assignment in our leadership programs, which is talk about a case study where there was clear enabling of one of those outcomes. Goes back to that conscious level. I guarantee that some, maybe all of these fundamentals were at play in order to produce that tangible outcome. Guarantee it. And so the trick, again, for us is, can we take it to a conscious level and practice and hone these 10 fundamentals of enabling? One other story. So my mother again, right? So when I was in 6th grade, and when I tell the story, my wife gives me a hard time. When I was in 6th grade, I became captain of the safety patrols. My mother celebrated as if I had become President of the United States. When I won 5th place in a track and field state meet, my mom cheered as if I had won the gold medal, right, in the Olympics. And when I would come home with a good grade, my mom rejoiced as if I had won the Pulitzer Prize. Now, I'm exaggerating a little, not a lot. Now, she didn't falsely sort of make things up. But she, again, goes back to what I think are leadership instincts. She instinctively knew that by celebrating small wins, Right? What does that do? It encourages and builds confidence to go after the bigger ones. And that's why this component is critical for one of those 10 fundamentals of enabling. So there you go. The leadership framework. You must be and do in all 4 domains. You must be and do in all 4 domains. Let me drill down in a couple areas. Let's take a look at the what you do. I want to talk about building cohesive teams. Leaders build cohesive teams, and they make it one of their essential 15 things that they must do. So when I was interviewed for a book back in 2007 called Apples Are Square, they came and interviewed me, and one of the questions they asked, as a leader, which, drove me nuts to begin with, but as a leader, is it more important to place your energy on the individual or on the team, and why? I think my answer was both, right? Both are equally important. So let me explain, right? Ultimately, we know decisions and judgments and actions are made by people, right? Individuals. So attracting and developing and retaining talented, high-performing people, pretty important part of what we all do. However, a group of talented and gifted, ambitious, motivated individuals don't necessarily equate to a high-performing team. Sports, tons of examples, right? But this is also true. A team of well-intentioned individuals who get along and work well together don't necessarily result in extraordinary results. So the point is, both are crucial. And here's how I say it. As individuals, you have to look for these things when we're hiring, developing, and so forth. But we also must develop cohesiveness within our teams. So if we were to look at the dictionary, because by the way, cohesiveness is a much higher state than good teamwork. Let me explain. So if we were to look at the dictionary definition, all right, physics, that from attraction by which particles of a body are united throughout the mass, whether like or unlike. So for example, teamwork is about effectiveness and quality and process and execution. But cohesiveness takes it one step beyond. It's about shared purpose and shared meaning and shared values and deep relationships. Teamwork is about cooperation, collaboration, I think we'd all agree. But cohesiveness takes it up a notch. It's about unbounded trust, loyalty, mutual respect, and genuine care. Teamwork is about skills and behaviors. But cohesiveness is about hearts and minds. Skills and behaviors and hearts and minds. Teamwork is about team performance. Cohesiveness is also about individual accountability. Teams are assembled to achieve specific short-term results, if you think about it, right? But cohesive teams are built to produce sustainable, desired outcomes, time and time again. Teamwork is about planned success, which is dependent on assumed preconceived conditions and circumstances. Who does what, titles, specific work plans, right? But cohesive teams, it's about enduring success through individual and team self-correction, adjustment, reflection, learning, growth, and discovery. And lastly, teamwork generates results for the sponsor, whoever that is, the company, the unit head, whatever. coach. But cohesive teams are also about enriching each other's lives. It's a pretty high bar. So here's the thing about a team of individuals. You got a lot of different stuff. As human beings, we're very complex, right? How we make decisions, our personal styles, different strengths and weaknesses, the approach. I mean, just a lot of differences among individuals that makes it particularly difficult and challenging. But here's the point about a cohesive team. Cohesive teams, the individuals share the same values and share the same purpose. And if you have that, ready? None of the stuff is important, the other stuff. Doesn't matter. Didn't say it was easy. Doesn't matter. So some of you may know I was with SmithBucklin for years, left, got in the crazy world of dot-coms and came back in 2002. And there was an individual who I had mentored when I had left, and she had risen in the company while I was gone. So when I came back, she was a pretty senior person. In fact, she was very senior, kind of most important person. I end up bringing my CFO from during my dot-com years to SmithBucklin. So I have my two most important executives. So about 2 months into this, the individual that was at SmithBucklin comes to me and says, I can't work with Al. He's the wrong guy. He doesn't understand the business, right? Al is coming to me and saying, can't work with Julie. Blah, 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 right? In fact, it got so bad that Al said, you know what? I'm leaving. By the way, he was in the West Coast, so he wasn't going to move his whole family until he sort of trialed run, right? So he was there for a few months. He says, Henry, it's not working out. I'm leaving. Two most senior executives, both basically saying, one is saying, this one isn't getting it. The other one's saying, I'm leaving because I can't work with her. So what did I do? So I had a bit of an intervention. So I went out to dinner, and they both talked and so forth. And at the end, I looked at them and I said, I can't make you guys be cohesive. But I'll tell you this, I know both of you. I know both of you really well. And I know you both share the same values and certainly share the same purpose for what we're trying to achieve at SmithBucklin. So I looked over to Al and I said, Al, if you leave now, you're going to leave an incredible opportunity, professional opportunity. Julie, if Al leaves, our board's going to know. And you know how difficult it's been to have the right kind of CFO in a company like a SmithBucklin. So I must have gotten across to them because, frankly, they ended up being incredibly cohesive. Now, they weren't going out buddy-buddies because of all the middle stuff, right? But they end up being incredibly cohesive and, we go off somewhere and talk about me, which is great, right? That's what you want in your cohesive team. So here are some thoughts and ideas on how to build cohesive teams. The first is you can't legislate cohesiveness. You can't. You can't make people be cohesive. However, you can articulate what the specific behaviors, group dynamics, and outcomes are. So here's what a cohesive team looks like. Genuine bonding. Support each other in good times and in bad. Nothing to do with personalities. Nothing to do with backgrounds. Right? Genuine bonding. High quality of communication. High quality of communication. No one sitting on the sideline. Active participation by all. All parts connect and work in harmony. Conflict. I could do a whole day around conflict. Right? Surfacing, confronting, and resolving conflict. Formal hierarchies and organizational do not get in the way of what we're trying to do, of doing the right thing. Right? I don't care what your title is. I don't care what your sphere of influence is. Right? Co-destiny. Everyone on the team is linked for success enjoying accountability. And of course, a sense of something bigger beyond your own title or your organizational unit. That's what the behaviors and group dynamics look like for a cohesive team. And you can articulate those. Can't legislate it, you can articulate them. Oh, and by the way, you can be clear that failure is not an option. Meaning, you as the head of your team, if you determine that there's someone on the team who's getting in the way of those behaviors, you can make a change. Failure is not an option. Another thing you can do, which is important, critically assess. I find that people don't do this. It's pretty straightforward. Critically and honestly assess, do you have people on your team that genuinely share the same values and purpose? By the way, I don't mean values religious. I'm talking about business values. Do your team members share the same values and the same purpose? Be clear on expectations and priorities. There's two components to performance. Individual area of responsibility, but also being a member of the team. Think about it, right? You got to perform at both levels. And then hold each member accountable. So on my management team, there are 4 what I would call big requirements. First, as a practitioner, we're all practitioners in our companies. That's part of our culture, right? We're all practitioners. Talent. We're a services company. It's all about talent. We're also running a business, so you got to have skills, right, around being a business executive. Oh, and number 4, being a SmithBucklin. You notice I specifically say leader executive. There is very specific actions and behaviors around being a SmithBucklin leader executive, regardless of what your unit is. All 4 are requirements to be on my management team. Teach, coach, and mentor, and be a role model. That's something else you can do, of course. Provide clarity and context for making decisions. What do I mean here? So, you can guys kind of see I'm kind of animated, walk around a lot, right? I talk loudly. So I realize that sometimes people may be confused when I present an issue. People may think I've already decided something. So I have to be very clear, right? I've decided, by the way, in all fairness, a corporation is not, it's not a democracy, right? I mean, there are times you just got to make a call, right? So I got to be clear. I've decided. I'm not going to sort of get you to agree with me and kind of play a game. I've decided. Or I'm leaning this way but want discussion. Or, you know what? We got to have discussion. There's no clear decision here. But the other point, though, is you have to make sure that every member of your team stands up and be counted, right? So they got to say, I agree with the decision, I disagree, but can live with it, or I can't live with it. Every member of the team has to stand up and be counted. We don't do that. Ensure conflict is dealt openly and directly, right? But know when to intervene. And then lastly, but very importantly, know when to let someone go. About, I think it was in the 90s, Fortune did an article, the top 10 reasons why CEOs fail. One of which was, they used the term at the time, inability to pull the trigger, right? It's hard. The higher you go up, maybe it's harder to let someone go because, well, I know this person, they've been with me, how's it going to look like? You have to know when to let someone go. Okay, let me drill just a little further on a couple quick areas to finish off. So earlier I said leadership is shaped and defined by character, because the fact is that certain requisite skills and experience might get you that title of position and authority, but it's your character that others will judge before they agree to be led by you, right? Kind of talked about this. I'm talking about the kind of character that inspires confidence and trust and loyalty, the kind of character that gives hope and strength to others, and the kind of character that invites and earns enthusiastic followers, right? So what is character? Here's my definition. Pretty straightforward, right? The sum total of your values and beliefs reflected in your behaviors, actions, decisions, and choices. So, are we born with our character? Right? That whole argument of nurture versus nature? Most studies would suggest that about 40% of who we are comes from the genes. Even political persuasion, by the way, they say. Let's agree with that. I'm not sure I buy it, but let's agree. 40%. Okay. Well, 60% is choice. Right? So those who earn leadership's invitation answer the question of character by choosing and exemplifying, again, I referred to this earlier, what I refer to as the 12 distinguishing qualities that define true leaders. And I want to probe a little bit on number 2. By the way, the order isn't necessarily meaningful, just the 12 distinguishing qualities. Number 2, trust, right? Trust is foundational to building relationships and achieving results. Think about the time where there wasn't trust. Without trust, small issues become big issues. And ineffective relationships lead to inefficiencies and wasted time, right? And conflict, missed opportunities, and ultimately failure. Now think about when there is trust. With trust, small issues are non-issues. And big issues are opportunities for learning and mutual problem solving, right? Trust deepens relationships and unleashes tremendous human potential. And as a result, right, trust lowers costs, boosts productivity, and improves individual and organizational performance. Now, it's hard to imagine anyone would disagree with what I just said, right? The word trust, for most, evokes a strong visceral reaction. We recall feelings of contentment and comfort, right? And security when trust abounds. And we vividly remember our insecurity, our vulnerability, right? Our disconnection when trust is absent. So what is trust? Jack Welch says, you know it when you feel it. And while that's probably true, it's not very satisfying. So I maintain if we dig a little deeper into the topic of trust, we reveal some nuances and varying definitions based on personal sort of experiences and context. So let me ask you again, what do you most often mean when you tell someone, I trust you? I believe that your opinion or judgment has a high likelihood to be accurate. I have faith in an expected result or outcome because it has your name on it. I know that you are principled, truthful, honest, and consistent in words and actions. I defer to you because of your position, knowledge, or experience. Or I have unwavering allegiance and devotion to you. I won't ask you to raise your hand again. But let me suggest, if you answer this question honestly and thoughtfully, what do you most often mean? Here's what it comes down to. If you say number 1, you sort of link trust with credibility. If you answered number 2, you think about trust in terms of confidence. Number 3 is about integrity. That's how you view trust in the mostly. And 4 is about respect. And 5 is about loyalty. The fact is that trust has many facets. Why is this important to understand? Well, first, if we understand how complex this human phenomenon is called trust, being able to dissect it a bit gives us deeper meaning and understanding. Plus, if we're able to get in touch with our natural inclination around these different areas, we are better then to interpret actions of others and what we may do to try to earn trust. And by the way, understanding trust's many facets allows us to self-manage around getting away from the all or nothing. So what do I mean? Let's say you have a project that is really time-based, high impact. In all fairness, what am I focused on with the people on my team, or maybe consultants or whatever at that point? Confidence and credibility. I may not have the luxury to be worrying about the other facets of trust. Might not be that important. On the other hand, if I'm going to hire an attorney on a big case, integrity and credibility are probably pretty important. And you go down the line. You have to understand where certain facets of trust that you employ, if you will, and let the others go for that moment if you need to. Think about this for a moment. Trust is like a diamond. A diamond is one of the most precious stones. Trust is one of the most precious and cherished human conditions. Right? Trust has great value. Trust creates value to both the recipient and the giver. We use diamond-coated tools to perform the most difficult cutting tasks. Trust can overcome stubborn obstacles and resolve fierce conflicts. A diamond is forever. Trust builds and nurtures meaningful, enduring relationships. And the quality of a diamond is dependent upon the cut of its facets. Right? The cut of its facets. Well, trust also has many facets, as we've been discussing. Now, probably the most praise or honor someone can bestow upon you is to utter the words, "I trust you absolutely." That means that you have elicited confidence, established credibility, exemplified integrity, gained respect, and built loyalty. You have earned trust in all of its facets. Now, if you were to go on Amazon and type in the word trust, literally 1,000 results will come up. From my perspective, this says it all. I couldn't agree more. Trust is an outcome of actions and behaviors. And it comes down to that. And as I thought about over the years, I've come up with my own trust-building behaviors and actions. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share with you. But I maintain all of us can get insight into that. Here's how. Try this exercise at your leisure. Draw a 2x2 matrix. On the top left quadrant, write down all the people you trust to a high degree. 1, 2, 5, whatever. On the top right, reasons why if you had to explain or defend. Bottom left, people you don't trust. And what would have to happen so you could. If you go through this exercise in a thoughtful, deep way, you will be able to, one, really get a handle on how you see trust and where trust is most important to you. But also, when you start answering the questions why, you'll start developing your own sets of actions and behaviors so that you truly can earn trust absolutely. Which, by the way, we should strive for that. We want to be very conscious of where we don't need to be in all the facets. But we want to strive to earn trust absolutely in our relationships. And then when you get done with all of that, ask yourself 2 questions. How many lists would I appear on the upper left quadrant? And how many lists would I appear on the lower left-hand quadrant? 2 final thoughts. So you notice that my presentation, the title is Leadership's Calling. And I self-published a book last year called Leadership's Calling as well. And it's a compilation of quotes, because during our leadership programs, we use quotes as big poster boards, because quotes are wonderful. They're drawn. I selected every single quote from some of the best thinkers, right? Because quotes are wonderful to sort of reinforce a point or allow you to go deeper or inspire some additional thinking, right? And people were taking photos of the quotes, right, poster boards. So I said, all right, we'll produce a book. But I selected the title Leadership's Calling for a very precise reason. And that is that it has a double meaning that so accurately describes essentially everything that I've been sharing with you today. Let me explain. The first meaning is the calling of leadership, right? Leadership's calling, the calling of leadership. And a calling is a strong inner impulse toward a particular course of action, especially when accompanied by conviction. The calling of true leaders is to have a major, profound impact on the lives of others and on the success and vitality of the organization he or she serves, right? The second meaning is leadership is calling. Leadership is calling. And here's why I think all of us should answer the call. Because leadership is the most powerful human force. Leadership is the most powerful human force. It is the spark, the fuel, and the engine to do good and to correct wrongs and to unite people and to effect positive change and to unleash tremendous human potential, to ignite breakthrough ideas, to create better tomorrows, and to leave footprints on other people's hearts. And here's the thing. Leadership is accessible to anyone. The business executive, the politician, the physician, the nurse, the small business owner, the parent, and in virtually all contexts of personal and professional life. So all of us should answer the call, should aspire to earn leadership's invitation and deliver on its promise. Last thought. Think about the time that you achieved that coveted title or position of power or authority. Maybe it's the current one. Now picture the martial artist kneeling before the master sensei in a ceremony to receive a hard-earned black belt. After years of relentless training, the student has reached the pinnacle of achievement in the discipline. Before granting the belt, says the sensei, you must pass one more test. I'm ready, says the student, thinking perhaps another round of sparring. You must answer the essential question. What is the true meaning of the black belt? The end of my journey, says the student. A well-deserved reward for all of my hard work. The sensei waits for more. Clearly, he's not satisfied. You are not ready for the black belt. Return in 1 year. Another year passes, and once again, the student is kneeling before the master sensei. What is the true meaning of the black belt? A symbol of distinction and the highest achievement in our art, says the student. The sensei says nothing for a few moments. Clearly, he's still not satisfied. You are not ready for the black belt. Return in 1 year. Another year passes, and once again, the student is kneeling before the master sensei. And once again, the sensei says, what is the true meaning of the black belt? The black belt represents the beginning, the start of a never-ending journey of work, discipline, and the pursuit of an ever higher standard. Yes, says the sensei, you are now ready to receive the black belt and begin your work. I wish you all great success in your own leadership journeys. Thank you very much.